What's up everybody, we're back in BFA and today we're checking out the new Seasonal Affix Reaping. So as soon as Tides of Vengeance is released, Infested will be retired and replaced by Reaping instead. And just like Infested, the Reaping affix will start on any Mythic plus Keystone level 10 or higher. So what is Reaping and how does it work? As soon as you start a plus 10 key or higher, you will notice that the good old Bwonsamdi is there to greet us. And whenever you kill a mob, any type, be it a neutral, a mini-boss, whatever, it will spawn a reaped soul that lingers around its corpse. And anytime we clear 20% of the trash count in any given dungeon, he will reap them and their souls will become hostile and comes after you. This occurs throughout the dungeon anytime you pass the 20% mark on the trash counter. So kill enough trash and you get reaped souls, so at 20, 40, 60, 80 and 100%. And you can avoid the last reaping at 100% by finishing all the bosses in a dungeon before you trigger it. But I'll go over that a bit later. So to give you an example of how it works, we did Freehold and doing the, at least for me, standard no shroud pull. Clearing up to the first boss gave us around 20% before the last pack that actually spawns the boss. And as soon as we hit the 20% mark, Bwonsamdi yells, "Rise, fallen ones," and all the trash we had previously killed charged at us. And as I said, the souls spawns where you kill the mobs. So in this example, we had a few mobs from where we were standing in the boss room, and the rest came running from the very start of the instance where we had our first pull. The reaped mobs will not aggro other mobs, so don't worry about that, but spreading out your 20% mob count too much, and they will come after you in a very staggered fashion, which is not always awesome. We found it a lot easier when they spawned close to each other. You didn't have to run and pick them up, you could AoE easier, and you could make better use out of cooldowns. So what this means is that you might want to rethink your routes a bit to get better reaping spawns, so you don't have 4 mobs running across half the dungeon to get to you. Because they will. But I'll go over that a bit later as well. So the mobs that do spawn aren't clones of the mobs you've killed. There are 3 different type of mobs that can spawn. So first out is the standard type Risen Soul. They do nothing but auto attack, and every successful auto attack applies the debuff Reap Soul. This deals 2% of a player's maximum health every 3 seconds and stacks. Can however be removed by a magic dispel. Next out is the Tormented Soul. They spam cast Grave Bolt. This is a 5-second long cast that can and should be interrupted. If successfully cast, it deals 25% of that player's max health. And lastly, the Lost Soul. Every now and then it uses a thing called Shadow Smash, which is a frontal cone or a rather large circle on the ground which can be avoided. Any player hit has their maximum health reduced by 20% for 1 minute. On top of this, when the Lost Soul dies, it casts Expel Soul, summoning lots of swirlies on the ground, and any player who is hit takes damage, is knocked back, and has their damage and healing reduced by 10% for 30 seconds, and the damage and healing reduction stacks per hit. Same thing with the Shadow Smash. However, these mobs will have 50% of the health of the ad that spawned it. So kill a tiny rat, 50% of that rat's HP. Kill the miniboss Ludwig in Freehold, and yes, 50% of his HP as a reaped soul. The reaped ads themselves weren't that much of a hassle to deal with. Long casts makes interrupting easy, and the dodgeable AoEs are very easy to see. However, they are very punishing if you do get hit. 20% reduced max HP for a minute is huge, or 10% healing or damage reduction, and yes, again, all of them stacks. So it is important that you do keep an eye out. So you want to make sure to interrupt the Tormented Soul's Grave Bolt, so you can get him stacked up nicely with the rest of the ads, but also to avoid any unnecessary damage taken. The tank needs to be quick on its toes to pick up the Risen Souls due to the Reap Soul debuffs, so you don't get that on everyone in the party. And DPS, you should chill for a second to allow the tank to get some aggro. I know it's tempting. The Lost Souls just needs to be tanked, and everyone should make sure that they move out of the Shadow Smashes, and if possible, mind your surroundings when you're about to trigger it, so you have ample space to deal with them, without accidentally pulling more mobs. It is enough with a swarm of souls, I promise you. Reaped mobs do not appear to be affected by affixes like Sanguine, and I don't expect them to bolster or spawn explosives either, so you only have to care about the mobs themselves, making it more predictable so it doesn't change on a week-to-week basis. They don't give you any trash count, and a killed reaped mob will stay dead, so they don't resurrect a second time and a third time. Once is enough. If you happen to wipe on a reaping pack, they will run back to their corpses and float around. When this happens, they appear to have a huge aggro range, but if you manage to avoid them, they will all aggro you instantly when you trigger your next reaping. However, they do not seem to have true sight, so you can stealth pass them, shadow meld and things like that. But as I said, even if you drop out of combat with one reaping pack, they will come after you when you spawn a new one. However, I am not sure if it's cheesable with 5 night elves and shadow melding every time it happens, but if it is, I'm going to go ahead and assume that Bliss will fix that. Otherwise, go team night elf. And the reaping mob seems to be sorted in the following way. You have your lost souls, which is the stronger creatures, like Iron Tide enforcers from Freehold or mini-bosses. The tormented souls, which is ranged creatures. These include casters that spam spells and archers that don't like to move. They are often the ones that you have to line of sight or grip or use interrupts on them to get them to group up, like the Iron Tide crackshot from Freehold at the start. And lastly, the risen souls. That's pretty much everything else, creatures that usually melee and do nothing else. So as you might have guessed, the risen souls are very common and they will swarm your party anytime a reaping happens. Knowing this, we can pre-plan our routes a bit and avoid some of the more annoying trash to make our reaping spawns a bit easier. Taking again this Freehold for example, we made sure that the mini-boss Ludwig was killed after the 80% reaping happened, so that we could clear all bosses, then get the last trash percentages, which makes the final 100% reaping not come in effect. As I previously said, finishing the bosses before the last reaping cancels it, which meant we didn't have to deal with a lost soul Ludwig with half of his HP pool, which would have just taken a long time. So new skips are sure to come into play due to this affix. Not only do you want to skip the last reaping whenever possible, but also, as I said, minimize the amount of very large HP mobs you pull like mini-bosses. A great add-on to help you if you aren't already using it is the method dungeon tool. Here you can pre-plan your route very easily, check exactly how much % you get per mob or pack, so you can plan ahead exactly where you're going to trigger your reaping. So I highly recommend you get into the habit of using this, at least if you plan to push higher keys. And the best part of it all is it is so much fun. Comparing Infested to Reaping is night and day. It was so much fun being able to pull packs without worrying about infested mobs. Seeing the whole environment change as one zombie throws a swarm of mobs after you is just awesome. It is so much fun, so a big thumbs up for me on that one, Blizzard. I am actually looking forward to pushing keys next season. And lastly, if all else fails, if you fail the key, the dungeon timer runs out and you're absolutely screwed, Bwonsamdi has got your back. As I said, when you start the key, Bwonsamdi will be there, and he will move around as you kill bosses. When the timer expires, it runs out for your keystone, Bwonsamdi offers you a bargain. So you can now talk to him and accept his bargain to serve him in life and death. Accepting this bargain will earn you the Bwonsamdi's bargain buff, increasing your health and damage by 20% for the remainder of the dungeon. Meaning, even if the keystone has failed, the timer is out, you get a nifty buff and you can finish it, get your loot and be on your merry way. And I think that pretty much covers it. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I really hope to see you guys get out there and get swarmed by something other than spawns of Gahun. If you have any questions at all, make sure to hit me up in the comments below. Don't forget to head over to my Patreon if you'd like to support my work, and as always, hit that subscribe button, leave me a like, and ring that notification bell and switch it to all. Thanks for watching everyone, and I will see you next time.